And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. You were at Warrior. We're recording this Monday, so you were there on Monday, today, technically. How was it? How was being back in the practice facility?
Not too bad. Good to be back in our usual perch up on the fourth floor watching. Kind of miss like being on the actual level of the ice. Feel like it's a more immersive experience when you're actually right there. You're gonna hear the guys talk shit to each other and all that
Oh,
fun
yes.
stuff. But no, it's just good to be back in the building. Good to see some hockey. Obviously, Bruins are missing a couple, maybe headliners, I guess, if you want to say, for Dev Camp with like Lysell and guys like that. But still got Beecher, Lohrei, Brittany Lyle, who looked really good day one. He could be a guy who I think is rising up the ranks. So just good to be back in the building. It's a good precursor for the next season. So
Oh, yes. I'm excited to see what's up with Mason Lohrei. That's a kid who played up this year, had a great year. But again, obviously was ahead with the age. If I'm correct on that, he
yeah,
was like
he was an
ahead.
overager.
Yeah, overager. So interested to see how he fares this week. I will not be there. I'm not there. I'm now full time at Turner. That's my thing. So I'm there now. I'm officially there. It sucks. I was seeing all the tweets and I was like, man, I'm getting some FOMO for not being at Bruins development camp. But anyways, luckily we have people on the ground like you who can tell us all about it. But today's episode will not have really anything to do with development camp because there's been lots of developments
Uh,
elsewhere. The big development of the past week, David Krejci announces that he is going back to the Czech Republic. He announced it via the Bruins Twitter. He put out a long statement. The minute I saw David Krejci made a statement, I said, well, he's gone. I didn't have to see the
yep.
tweet. I knew he was gone. Like, that's it. You wouldn't just do that. Oh, I'm coming back. That would not happen. But he announced that he's going back to the Czech Republic. The team he's going to already released a video announcing that he's coming back. So imagine if that was what, like, how Bruins fans heard. They saw a guy running around the Czech Republic looking for a tailor.
Everyone's freaking out. They're on Google Translate trying to figure out what it meant.
That would have been great.
It would not be good.
Not be good. But that comes, it was a day or two after all the free agency stuff happened. So what the Bruins did in free agency really kind of made you think Krejci wasn't coming back. And then obviously Krejci announcing it confirmed it. There's a lot to take from this. And I think, there's two angles we can approach. We can obviously talk about Krejci's impact on the Bruins as a whole, but I think we've done that a lot before. I think it's we've said it, incredibly underrated, so good, so clutch in the postseason, just so good. I mean, that's one thing I think Bruins fans are starting to see now, and the Bruins team is seeing it as well. The benefits of having the 1-2 down the middle is now going to go away. And you're going to see that play itself out. So I want to focus on that. Who is the right option to replace Krejci on that second line?
Good question, Evan. Yeah, that is the most.
I thought I'd toss that over to you.
Yeah. It's funny. I thought going into this offseason, the biggest question mark was going to be upgrading defense. I feel like that's what we've talked about for most of the summer is what top four guy are you going to get there? Who are you going to put with McAvoy? That's kind of been the biggest issue. Now, far and away, it's not even close. It's who's going to be the new 2C. And you kind of look at the way they're set up. It doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence in terms of going into the season. I think now why people miss Krejci is because now you realize you had that level of security of throughout all this, upheaval with the roster when they kind of did that mini kind of retooling, from 2015. You still had, your top two centers locked in year after year. And you knew at the very least, even if David Krejci was dragging along a bunch of Joe Schmoes on his line, you knew what you were going to get from him and his production.
As
now,
EDT says, deli meat.
Yes,
deli meat on both of his lines.
Yes. But now you've got a situation where you're probably looking at internal competition. I don't think there's no anyone in free agency. I don't know if you're signing Jumbo Joe to be your 2C, which holy hell.
Wow.
Yeah. But, you go through the list of options they have. Charlie Coyle is obviously probably most likely the first guy to get a look at a top six role. He's getting paid like a top six player. You'd imagine that if we fast forwarded from, 2019 in November when he signed that big contract till now, the Bruins probably be like, yeah, this is part of the plan. We expected him to be like this, to be the 2C. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff has happened in between November 2019 to now that maybe has cast that into a little bit more doubt in terms of whether or not he's truly a top 6 player. But whether it be that, Eric Howella, Nick Foligno, Jack Eichel could be a wild card. They've got options, but are they better options than when you have David Krejci? No, of course not. It's even if Charlie Coyle, let's say he runs with it, what do you expect out of Charlie Coyle playing his game that we've seen over like an 82 game season? It's still what, like 55, 60 points? That'd be great.
That would be a lot. That would be expecting a lot.
Yeah. That's, I think, I'm probably juicing those stats a little bit with like Hall added to his line, but you could see it happening, but you're still not getting the level of production and value, especially of what David Krejci would have brought on a 1-year deal. So maybe it's something they look outside the market, whether it's a trade or what have you, to try to find that 2C, or maybe they're just rolling with the punches and they go for it this year, which it's tough, man, because we talked all about this win now window and the fact that you're signing these kind of veteran guys like Howella and Foligno and Forbort and these guys. If you assembled this roster right and you had David Krejci back, I think you'd look at this offseason so far, it'd be like a A-, B+, right? In terms of like, you got your top 6 back, you've got Taylor Hall back, you've got a lot of depth now on the third line, and you've got possible asset that you can move now in Jake DeBrusk. Now you're in a spot where you're still in this win now window, but you've got this massive hole at 2C that you don't really know who's going to fit in there. Is Jake DeBrusk expendable now because maybe you need a guy like him who could bounce back on a third line to score you 20 goals? It's just tough because it's, as we said, I think last time, it's been a recurring theme since this offseason started. It feels like there's a lot more shoes that have yet to drop in terms of the Bruins charting out their offseason. But at this point right now, and if you even are mapping it out, looking forward as to what their most likely plan is, I don't see you can frame any argument in which this team, as constituted right now, is any better than last year's team, which was not good enough to win the Stanley Cup. I would love to be surprised and, Charlie Coyle fits in seamlessly, or Jack Studnicka is revived and, he's all of a sudden fits in perfectly in a middle 6 role. But you're asking for a lot here. And this is already a team that had a lot of holes going into this offseason. So in terms of the timing, it's a tough hit for the Bruins in terms of Krejci leaving this year. Because again, if he was back in the fold and you added that bottom 6 depth, I'd be feeling pretty good about this team right now.
See, to me, there is a way in which they might be better. Now, first of all, I think Studnicka is more than a wild card. I think there could be a chance he's given time on that second line, given the potential they had for him. But there's this thought that's been kind of kicking around in my head the past few days. Not a beach thought, not one of those thoughts you go to the beach and think about. Just regular life thought. Driving down the street, think of it. But what's the big issue with this team? What's been the big scoring issue with this team the past few years? And it was depth, right? It was depth. That was always the issue. That's what, they lost playoff series because of it. They, didn't win the Stanley Cup partially because of it. And one thing that, paying a lot to a second line, to a center, to anybody is it takes money away from elsewhere. Now, obviously Krejci is valuable. This is a minority opinion. And this is just kind of a thought I've been kicking around. But they added a bunch of depth, right? Holla, Nosek, Foligno. You have to wonder if they took that Krejci money and put it elsewhere and invested in the third line a little more than just Charlie Coyle. And they invested in, Nosek, who's a solid offensive option for that fourth line. They didn't just roll back the same jabronis on the fourth line. They actually kind of seem to be putting something together when it comes to depth scoring. What if all that depth gets you more goals? The third line is going to score more than it did last year. The fourth line is going to score more than it did last year. The second line, might not be as productive, but you're getting production from those third and fourth lines. So come the postseason, if you shut down the Bergeron line and, as you saw in the Islanders series, the Krejci line as well, you have other areas you can score. That's one thought. Another thing, and this is I've debated tweeting this out, but then I'm like, no, this is going to get some backlash. I don't know if I really want to dive into all these replies, but what if you switched Pastrnak and Smith? I know no one wants to touch that top line, but think about it. If you put Hall and Pastrnak with Coyle on the second line, let's say, you're putting him in the best possible position. If you cannot produce between Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak, that's a way bigger problem that is completely out of the Bruins' control. And that is, that's on Coyle 100%. But I do wonder, you put Smith up there on that right side of Bergeron and Marchand. Marchand and Bergeron work pretty much with anybody. You bring Pastrnak down. I mean, imagine Hall with Pastrnak. I don't know. That's a thought I've had lately, and I can't help but think it because I do think that there's a way in which this could work.
Yeah, no, I think if you're taking, the optimist look at it, you could frame that argument of, you don't need the top line with Bergeron, Marchand, and Pastrnak to be this, you expect them to still be world beaters, right? But you don't need a second line where you got, 2 70-point guys and Krejci and Hall. Maybe you're better off where it's Coyle, again, as we said, 50 points, and, Taylor Hall has, 55, 60 points. But if your third line also has, Foligno having 15 goals and Howell had 15 goals and DeBrusk, 20 goals, then maybe it all balances. If he's not traded, then maybe it all balances out that way of, you add some more of that depth. The only problem is it feel like it'd be a better problem to have if you just had David Krejci there and you had Charlie Coyle driving the third line, because I think it's even one of those situations where, looking past Charlie Coyle's, lack of production last year, you could very easily frame it as he's due for a bounce back, whether he's got a lot more talent next to him, whether that be on the second line or if he was on that third line. Howla and Foligno was a lot better than what he had a lot of last year. And he was injured. I mean, it wasn't even like it was a nagging injury. It was like an avulsion fracture and like a partially torn patella tendon, I want to say is what it was. It doesn't sound like something that you just, get arthroscopic and cleans it out and you're good to go. It feels like it was something that was definitely bothering him for most of the year. So, he could very well look like the Charlie Coyle that we saw in the playoffs in 2019 and for extended stretches, the following year. I mean, I think he was on pace for 20 something goals if it was a full season in 2019-20. So he very well could roll with that spot. It's just, again, you'd rather him be on like a third line where it's, I mean, look at Tampa, right? Tampa already has guys loaded in the top 6, but what line would kill teams? It's that third line that was getting these better matchups. And you've got, again, Blake Coleman on most crappy teams, probably with Calgary, could be a top 6 guy. If he's your third line guy and he's got those matchups, they're gonna eat up whoever they matched up against. So again, you kind of you try to make the best of what you got right now, because I don't really know how else, unless you're, let's say it's like a Dvorak or a guy like that, but even then you don't know how much that moves the needle. It's just one of those things where this off season where you needed a lot of stuff to go right anyway, you're now relying on like four more other factors to fall in your favor, which as a, I don't think anyone would place a bet on that based on how hockey is and how these variables can change, because you're already hoping that Mike Riley, takes another step, that Charlie McAvoy takes a big step, that Patrice Bergeron stays healthy, which, holy crap, if Patrice Bergeron goes down with an injury,
Good
yikes.
luck.
Yeah. And again, we could talk about this for another 30 minutes of all the factors that you need to go in your favor. And to, some obviously luck is involved with every team that goes on a Stanley Cup run, but it's one thing if you got, one or two things of like for the Lightning, like we need Victor Hedman to stay healthy. We need, Andrei Vasilevsky to stay healthy. Bruins need like 8 different players to either have major bounce back years or stay healthy. And, it's just one of those things where you kind of look at their odds right now, and barring another, big development, this team, you're kind of placing your bets on a lot of just bounce back and, regression to the mean to get you back into being a viable contender, which if you just had David Krejci, it'd be a lot easier just to look at the roster and be like, oh, this is a lot deeper team. They're better. Right now, you can't really make that argument.
Speaking of Bergeron, guess who's 36? Bergeron. And guess who's up next after next season? Patrice Bergeron. So imagine the day that Patrice Bergeron announces he's retiring or leaving. He would never, I don't think he'd play for another team, but retiring will be the day that there are riots in Boston. You would see it. You would absolutely see it. But yes, exactly. Again, I do take the optimist perspective of it, but you're right. I mean, again, all these problems would be solved with Krejci. I mean, imagine a third line of Foligno, Coyle, and Haula, or even if you want to move Coyle to the right side and have Haula in the middle. I mean, like that third line would be very, very dangerous. And instead, you're kind of relying on now a solid third line, better than you had before, though. Yes. That's the other thing. It's going to be an improvement on the third and fourth lines this year. So maybe that's where you get some added production. Maybe they figure we can add some production there and then maybe lose some from the second line. Or again, I mean, it's tough because breaking up that first line is always a challenge. Cassidy doesn't love to always do it. But I do wonder if that's sort of a thing they look at, to kind of get scoring going on that second line, whether it's Coyle in the middle, Studnicka. I mean, granted, Studnicka's nowhere near the level of Hall and Pastrnak, but I'm almost curious if playing him between them could also maybe work. I don't know. These are things that I'd love to see happen for a game or two during the season. Give it a shot, try it out. But there's a team out there with a way worse situation at center, and in many places actually, but this team has a really, really, really bad situation at center, and it got worse. It was already horrible. It got worse on Friday night when Jack Eichel and his agents put out a statement demanding he be traded. This is not going the way we think it should be going. This is going well off the tracks. Everyone thought that Eichel would be dealt somewhere around the draft or before free agency. He was not. He was not. He is still a Buffalo Sabre, although he is at Warrior Ice Arena. He's in Massachusetts right now practicing. So as he does most off seasons, correct? This is not like a 1 year thing.
I tweeted that video out. And people were losing their minds. It's like he's from Chelmsford and he's here up the entire summer. So
I can't wait till he forgets his Sabres practice jersey one day and like Matt Grizzlick's like, oh dude, just wear one of ours. Like just throw it on for just this skate. And someone gets a picture of it, him in a Bruins practice sweater, dying. I will come to Brighton just to get the picture of that, because those tweets, those replies to that would be pretty incredible. But he is miraculous. I mean, we thought he'd be gone by now, whether it be Anaheim, Minnesota, the Kings. We thought he'd be gone. And the real thing is with him getting traded to the Bruins, right now it's a tough. I mean, it's easier, I guess, at the moment than it was, a month ago. A month ago, it was high price, probably not going to want to deal him in the division, want to kind of deal him somewhere else to a team that has more assets to give up. But now is not the easiest time. The easiest time will be when his no movement clause kicks in after next season. And what's funny is they keep not trading him. You have to think at some point they're going to trade him. But is it realistic? Is there any chance that it could happen around now? For the Bruins.
For the Bruins, I think it's extremely, extremely slim. I just look at the Buffalo's in a horrific spot right now. Like they clearly, asked for way too much. Teams aren't biting. These teams that you thought would be like natural fits, right? Of Minnesota, even, where that's a team that was kind of you thought it was maybe a dark horse, and you thought about it more and more. And like, oh, that team makes a lot of sense. Like Bill Guerin's been very aggressive since getting there. They've got, a lot of young assets. That'd be an intriguing team. They seem like they're out of it. I think Michael Russo from The Athletic said like the asking price is way too high, so they're just out of the running already. I think the Rangers, maybe they've circled back, but I think they've balked at the price. Anaheim, LA, all these teams that I think if it was April when we talked about it, I'd be like, oh yeah, he's going to be with LA, right? Or he's going to be with Anaheim. Like it makes so much sense. So Buffalo has messed that up in terms of, just the fact that they're asking for too much. And then he's still a damaged asset at this point. Like no one wants to trade for a guy that wants a procedure that has not been done, I think, but on an NHL player, I want to say is what it is that he wants. He's also $10 million a year. You have all these other, issues tacked on to the fact that Buffalo is asking for a lot. Like what team's interested right now? And it seems like at this point right now that Buffalo has to just accept they're going to get a minimal return for a franchise player, because you'd expect he was going to get traded, leading up to the draft, right? Where teams were ready to give away draft capital. That's come and gone. All right. Maybe the start of free agency, right? Before teams use all this cap space, which as much as teams threw out a bunch of, heavy contracts during the, Wednesday and Thursday, we're still in a flat cap era. Like there's still teams they just can't tack on 10 million, even if let's say Buffalo 1.5 million off of that. Like taking on 8.5 million is not an easy thing to do right now without doing some massive. And again, it's not like you can easily dump contracts or move guys around, even because so many other teams are spent to the max right now. Like you're in this weird spot where is Eichel even going to play another game for Buffalo? Like they're also have been delaying the surgery. So what if he starts the year injured? What if
you'd have to think he's not? You'd have to think he's got to be done up there.
Or what if it's like, he's out there and it's like Pierre-Luc Dubois again, where it's like, all right, Columbus eventually was like, he's tanking his value because he's not doing anything out there. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the best solution is for Buffalo. I would not want to be Kevin Adams right now because I think seems very obvious that they're just going to have to, bite the bullet and trade him for what, a minimal return based on what he is and what he very well could be. You could put him with, if you had a healthy Jack Eichel and you had him with Taylor Hall and Craig Smith, like he could be a 110 point player over an 82 game season. I mean, he's that good, especially if he's with more talent around him. But beyond just the fact that, from Boston's perspective, that they're at, their trade packages still wouldn't compare to even a team that's probably asking for a minimum thing. Like New York's not including Lafreniere or anything at this point, but like even if they offered Keandre Miller and like, Hedl or like Kako or one of those guys, any of that trumps the Bruins' best efforts at getting a guy, unless you want to, I don't know, do you want Stanika, Swayman, DeBrusk, like 2 first-round picks, like, but also when it comes down to it, beyond just the returns and for the Bruins, the cap and how you're kind of manage that. I also think Buffalo just doesn't want to trade with Boston. Like, why would you? After you got burned by them last time with the Taylor Hall deal, you don't want Jack Eichel, scoring hat tricks against you for the next decade in your own division.
And the Bruins just took their starting goalie.
And took your starting goalie. Now Buffalo's goaltending duo is now Craig Anderson and friggin' Aaron Dell.
Yeah.
So you've doomed them in that regard. And I mean, like, if the Bruins were, I think they were aware of David Krejci wasn't going to come back. They wouldn't have spent and done all this stuff. I don't think, it was this shocking thing of like, Don Sweeney spent money on all these guys and called David and got like he was like, oh, I'm not coming back. Like, I don't think it was like that. I think they had some foresight that was going to happen. But look at like Sam Reinhart. Like that would be a perfect fit for what the Bruins would need right now. Like he would not be as high of an asking price as what Eichel is. Obviously he played some wing, but he can play at center. Had like, I think a 37 goal pace over 82 game season last year. Like very, very good player. That should be a guy you target. And you didn't hear anything with the Bruins in terms of traction with Buffalo over Sam Reinhart. So even if the Bruins scrap together, I think the best offer, I still don't know how Buffalo at this point takes it. They're already so far down the hole that you wonder if they're just, they're going down with the ship at this point. And then by next October, they trade him for pennies on the dollar to another team out west, because I just can't see a situation where it gets so desperate for Buffalo that their best offer is biting the bullet and sending them to Boston.
You also can't imagine that a team out west right now, like a team like Anaheim or LA, is going to mortgage their future on a guy like Eichel, who has these injury issues, who has that massive contract, because that could easily, they could be going down. The other funny thing that I always find funny with the Sabres, and I feel bad for a guy like Kevin Adams in the situation. I don't know if you ever saw the YouTube video. The Sabres have like a behind the scenes type like internet show. And they did a whole behind the scenes of the Taylor Hall negotiations and getting Taylor Hall to the Sabres and how that all went down. And he was a brand new GM at the time. He was so optimistic, and he's telling, oh, we're going to put you with Eichel and we're going to build something here. And, they were pumped. They were pumped. And now you fast forward a year, Eichel's going to be gone. Reinhart's gone. Hall's gone. I mean, your Linus Ullmark's gone. Linus. I got to get used to that. Linus Ullmark is gone. But I mean, they got nothing up there, nothing, not a thing. And you wonder what he's going to get dealt for. You wonder what Eichel is going to get in return for him. I mean, back during the season, it was, McAvoy or Pastrnak and maybe another first or something else, other prospects. Now, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the Bruins are ever going to trade McAvoy or Pastrnak. So I don't think they would ever even be included in the deal. Maybe Buffalo says we'll only trade with you if it's McAvoy or Pastrnak, because there's other teams that might be willing to take a guy like Eichel. So I don't know. But again, it's a fun thought to have. It becomes a tiny bit more realistic by the day. Every day that goes by that he's not traded, this tiny part of the optimism starts to shift. It gets a little higher. And people around here get antsy because they see him out on that Warrior ice. They go, man, he looks good in black and under the skating across that spoke to be. But it is funny to think about. It's interesting to think about a guy like him, especially when there's issues around here with who the second line center is going to be. And obviously, Eichel would make a pretty damn good second line center. As you mentioned, Hall, Smith on his left and right side. That's not too bad. I mentioned Omar quickly, and we discussed this a little bit on Poke the Bear, I think, with Rask. And the more I think about it, the more I do see, it just being Olmark and Swayman throughout the season. And I don't see Rask coming back into the picture with that. I don't. I know we didn't plan on doing this, but I don't see it. I don't know. I mean, unless there's something crazy that happens, I think there's a better chance that David Krejci comes back for the playoffs. Everyone's hyped up about that. I mean, do you think what do you think the likelihood is that Rask returns?
Right now, maybe I give it 25% that he's back. I mean, I think it all is going to depend on cap space, and I think just how confident they are in Olmark and Swayman are going to be next year. And I think they really are high on Olmark. I think that they wouldn't give him that term if they didn't think he was a player that with a better defense in front of him would thrive. But, we could be looking at this, and let's say we're in January and Olmark's got a .901 save percentage and Swayman's up and down and the Bruins are treading water. I think a lot of people who are more than happy to, wave goodbye to Tuukka Rask could all of a sudden be, clamoring for his, triumphant return in February if that's the case. So I think they're going to be fluid with the situation of not like, unlike maybe how they approach this offseason going into free agency where it's like, all right, we know David Krejci's not coming back, so we're going to spend on, depth outside the organization. I don't think, the master plan maybe is just to completely shut the door on Tuukka Rask. That, again, it's always tough to try to goalies. It's what makes the most elite goaltenders in the league elite, is because they do it consistently or at some level consistency every single year. So you can never tell. Like, as much as I think people have very, very high, probably unrealistic expectations about Swayman, you have to expect that there's going to be, stumbles along the way. Olmark getting to a new city, new environment, higher stakes could be the similar situation. Sometimes you can never tell with these guys, right? So, I mean, look at 2010 with Tuukka Rask. I mean, he was lights out that whole year. Going to next year, you're probably a lot of Bruins fans like, all right, when we still have Tim Thomas, but we got the goalie of the future. We're all set to go. And what do you know? Tim Thomas takes that spot back and goes on a crazy, ridiculous run. Like, you can sometimes it's almost like the most important thing is just having goaltenders in place that you're comfortable with, and then just letting the luck and just how variable it is with goaltenders kind of play out and go from there and adjust on the fly. So I think the Bruins are covered in that. I think the most important part of it is lockdown and that they have options. So if Olmark and Swayman are rolling with it and you don't have to worry about it, then you don't have to worry about bringing Rask back. If one of them's struggling, then bring them. Like, it's the most important thing is at least having multiple backup options, which the Bruins have, as opposed to Buffalo, who now has Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell, which mother of God.
You put it well, though. It's a backup option. It doesn't have to be back, but could be. If you really need him come January, February, that's an option. I wonder if he's practicing at the Bruins facilities and stuff. I wonder if they have him practicing there during the season, because that's
he's actually going to roll. He's up in Buffalo. He's going to be doing stuff up there. We're going to trade guys just to add speculation. So
maybe they will. Anyways, that's Bruins Beat for the week. Connor, before you go, what would you like to plug?
Yeah, we're going to have plenty of dev camp coverage all throughout this week over at BSJ. Obviously, as I said earlier, lots of intriguing prospects, a lot of catching up with guys, obviously based on the way the last year was with COVID and schedules and cancellations, postponements, all that. Weird year for a lot of different players out there. So good to get some perspective from them at how they've kind of come along in their game. So we'll have all that over at BSJ. If you want to subscribe over at BSJ, much appreciated. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that for CLNS Media. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.